Our guest is going to be with us for this hour. We'll be back next week for another full hour plus to flesh more of this out. That's why there's just so much news. Steve Quayle of stevequayle.com and the Q-Files joins us. Best-selling author, syndicated radio host for 23 years, probably one of the most popular guests, maybe even more popular than myself, on Coast to Coast AM, that I know because I've talked to the insiders, not just at Coast to Coast, but at Clear Channel, talk about how much the ratings go up when Steve Quayle is on. I would hear this guy talk about issues 20 years ago, and I thought, he's sincere. A lot of that's true, but he's crazy on a bunch of this other stuff. And then now, most of what he talked about 20 years ago, he'd been around a few years before me, that is vocally, ended up being true. I mean, I remember him talking about they've already got clones in laboratories, they're already splicing us with animals, and then 10 years later, it was mainstream news. Growing humanoids in cows to harvest their organs and saying they have no rights because they're part pig or part cow. I mean, that's in the literature 20 years ago. Now it's in the news, and it's like, oh, big deal. And oh, there's super genes they're finding in people, and they're taking your blood at the doctor and not telling you it's being sold to be tested, and then later it's worth billions and you don't get paid. I heard Quayle talk about that 20 years ago. Now it was in Wired Magazine yesterday. CBS News 2 days ago. So we're living in the future. It's just not evenly distributed. There is a breakaway civilization. What we've been told about the earth and its history has nothing to do with reality. What modern churches preach about the age of the earth and all this is a false debate to then be discredited by science itself putting out disinfo. The truth is we don't know. But it's twisted interpretations of the Bible. If you actually interpret it correctly and look at what's currently happening, then it makes incredible sense, and it's scary because you go, oh, my God, this is real. But you will not hear it from 99% of the preachers, folks. So Steve Quayle joins us. He's going to get into some of the wilder stuff next week in an hour-and-a-half interview with David Knight here on this transmission. But the issues we're going to get into now is the war on the military. Bobby Jindal calls for arming the public. And then suddenly there's a shooting they're hyping up like it's the end of the world. We're going to look at admitted subliminals and carrier waves and how screen time is brain damaging the public. That's the main issue he wants to get into. And then when you actually research what he's saying, it's in the research papers. It's even in the news that screen time is brain damaging children and adults. Don't give babies screen time. Carrier waves, reprogramming brain. Who would have known? It puts you into a sleep level. The exact carrier waves by accident, they're claiming. Because, see, outside researchers at universities who weren't paid to do it by DARPA 30 years ago, they'll go and do a study and go, it's funny, it puts you in a sleep state right at near sleep, like sleepwalking, and it's an exact carrier wave resonance with the light flicker, and there's a carrier wave audio. It's really weird that they, out of thousands of different frequency levels, this right one got chosen. Because it's on purpose. I was allowed into DARPA research facilities. See, they arrest so many people now. I talked about this a decade ago, really 14 years ago, and didn't realize what I was being allowed into because it was never really spoken. It'd be like, let me take you in this lab now. And they'd be like, look on the door. And it would say, restricted, DARPA. And it was at UT. And I was taken through all this stuff. And it was like a science fiction movie. And it was all about carrier waves, mesmerizing. They had a whole area about how to make women become sexually excited with electrodes hooked to their genitals to actually see. I'm not going to say it on air, but you know when a woman gets excited. And I just, even 14 years ago, when was it? It was with Kevin Booth in '99. So it was 16 years ago. I know I'm ranting. I'm going to go to Steve Quayle now. It's just he tells me his topics he wants to cover, and then I independently know it's true, and I'm just realizing this is so insane. No wonder most of the public can't wake up. They're under positronic attack. We're living in a science fiction movie. We're living in a dystopia. Why are some of us immune, or at least quasi-immune? Because when I watch mainstream TV now, I find myself wanting to just give in to it. But then something in me says, no, I'm not going to submit. But, I mean, it is powerful, folks. I guess the Bible says if it wasn't for Christ coming, even the elect would be deceived and given over to great delusion. Steve Quayle, thank you for joining us. SteveQuayle.com.
Well, Alex, what an intro. And this is probably the most pressing issue of our day because, you know, we used to talk, you and I used to talk at large about televisions and all the stuff they were doing with televisions. People poo-pooed it. And now I want to coin a new term on your radio program. Let's call it, instead of conspiracy theorists, let's call it conspiracy realists. The weight of evidence is upon us. And I like what, and this is important, I like what Donald Trump told what's his name? The guy
Anderson Cooper of the Central
Anderson
Intelligence
Cooper?
Agency.
No, yeah, nobody trusts you. 70% of the people don't trust you. And to watch the liberal left and the globalists and the elitists basically crawling out of their skin over Trump. You know what's interesting? Right now, telling the truth is absolutely contraindicated in this country. Nobody tells the truth. And so all of a sudden, Donald Trump comes along and tells the truth. And boy, the fangs and their toenails grow out into claws. But I think the thing that we got to talk about is reality avoidance syndrome. That's another term that I like to use. Look, Alex, they've bastardized the English language so bad anymore that you can't even use terms that used to have a common meaning because everything's being twisted.
George Orwell said that was the Fabian socialist plan in his nonfiction books, and that's why he turned against him at the end, was to remove language and turn people into politically correct creatures that only knew a few dozen terms.
Absolutely. And again, Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand just nails it. She just nailed it. Obviously, she was involved with one of the Illuminists and knew their plans. But here's the deal. Even our television sets are not only watching us, but what you said in the introduction is so true. Infrasonic subliminal messages. If people understood that at one point in probably a decade, the majority of money in black ops was going to mind control. Now, every day we hear about neural implants. Every day we hear about basically the robots taking over. Every day we hear about cyber sex. We hear about virtual sex. What they're trying to do is divorce everyone. And I believe that video games, now look, I'm not mad at gamers, but I don't play them. But the point is,
it is a mind control platform developed by DARPA. That's declassified.
Absolutely. So what we have to do is basically get people to do an amazing thing. Shut down for at least 6 hours a day. And I mean, some people are on, I can just tell you by their emailing to me, are on almost 24/7, and then they crash and come back. But the subliminal messages, and then when you basically tie it in with all the mind control, all the psychotropic drugs, and now the big announcement was scopolamine or burundinga. By the way, burundinga, the scopolamine dust is called zombie dust. You know, I remember talking about that 20 years ago, and the glaze came over everybody's eyes. But the problem is that people now cannot think. I think it was Hitler said, it's a good thing for us, people don't think. I paraphrased it. Now look at, too, all of the news that Hitler never died in the bunker with Eva Braun. Never did. Even the DNA test, independent DNA. Now, why is that critical? Because you and I have used the term the Fourth Reich, the Fifth Reich, and the Final Reich. There are people that have written books by those titles. But one of the fascinating things is that so much effort was being put in, even in the days of Germany, to control what people thought, to control, what people did. And let me give you a good example. The vilifications of the veterans, because we got to get into this. It just came out, the warnings you've been giving, the warnings I've been giving, that 238,000, I bet you it's closer to 250,000 to 300,000, of vets have been intentionally denied not only their benefits, but medical care. And this is one of the most infuriating things in the world. Yet, most of the congressmen and all of the Senate, especially the traitors in the Senate, which is the majority, do not even take up the cause, even former veterans. And when Trump made the statement about McCain that he did, in the past, we did shows on the POWs, the MIAs left behind, and his name always popped up on top of the cover-up. Now, why is this critical? Because at all costs, the globalists and illuminists do not want any truth coming out. That's why the virtual reality, that's why the virtual world, that's by the consistent repeating of lies on the mainstream news. All the networks are owned by the same people. You can switch channels and get the same headline news and the same word for word. They may put on a different blonde or a different brunette, but the bottom line is it's the same message over and over. Tell a lie, tell a big enough lie, tell it often enough, and the people will accept it as reality.
And now they're intensifying the lies to a level never before seen in an attempt to overturn reality itself. I mean, we would think that this would backfire on them, but they obviously think it's going to be successful, saying 2 + 2 = 5. They actually teach that. That you can keep your doctor when you can't, that raising debt limits don't raise debt limits, that white people kill more black people than black people kill white people. I mean, just absolute inverted reality, just intensifying. And as you mentioned, just in the last couple of years, RT reported 230,000+ U.S. troops denied care, period. Every veteran I know is being denied health care at the VA right now unless they were high-level officers. They are being told, no, we're not going to give you treatment for that. No, we're not going to take care of you. And we see in the movies now, the bad guys are the former vets. They're clearly getting ready for a purge of the military, a purge of vets, because they're worried about anybody who would know how to organize and resist during a totalitarian takeover.
Including biker gangs in Waco. One of the things that I think most people have got to understand is Fast and Furious was a big deal. It wasn't a minor infraction of the law. It was arming gangs, and what they admit to arming is totally different. 15 years ago, Alex, if you remember, there were ships being unloaded in the ports, the West Coast ports from Seattle.
It was in the LA Times. They caught containers full of tens of thousands of fully auto AK-47s.
Absolutely. But what they didn't talk about was the heavy weapons that were already brought into this country and pre-staged. Good example. A friend of mine was and this is a contemporary story, a couple of years ago, and he said he was on the Columbia River in a certain town. I forget the name of the town, but he had to do an electrical check. He was a power or lineman, and he said he got into a warehouse, and his curiosity was just provoked. And he said this, there were literally hundreds and hundreds of crates of Russian weapons. Now, why is that critical? Well, the Columbia River comes right in pretty much to, parts of Washington and other parts, and they can come in on boats. They can come in on little mini subs, certain areas, depending on high tide and stuff. But this is real evidence. Now,
I remember you 15 years ago saying they were secretly training Russians in anti-terrorism for the American people in Denver. And then 2 years ago, it was on Fox News, the Denver Post, and other papers. They admitted Russian troops were here training to take on. So how are we at war with Russia, but then at the same time, under the UN, they're training them to occupy us? How does that dialectic work? And then I talked to folks in the state police, and Joe Biggs talked to folks in the Banditos. They said that they're getting rid of the older motorcycle gangs that aren't part of the Mexican mafia in the future for a takeover in Texas. I don't know your view on that, but you mentioned motorcycle gangs.
Well, yeah, my view is that obviously the cohesiveness of quote, a motorcycle, let's call it a club, okay? Because not all these guys are gangs, okay? No matter what colors. Now, you know as well as I do that whole thing in Waco was a setup. And I'm telling you this.
Even NPR now admits it was a setup.
Yep. And the shots fired, the greatest travesty, and I pray that some of the judges in Texas at the state level, including the Supreme Court of Texas, will absolutely step into this, because those guys were held, how long, Alex? Some of them 30 days?
They were grabbing people and the mom and pops in the town that weren't even part of it.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've got to ask yourself why. Well, here's the answer to your question first on the gangs, because they can form, especially the veterans. I would guess, now I don't know the makeup of those different groups that were involved, but I would guess pretty close to a majority were veterans. I would guess that. So it's not a difficult job.
So they're just worried about any organization, just like militias, just like they don't want outside farmers markets or lemonade stands, any swap meets, garage sales. The feds passed a law for $15 million fines on garage sales. That's Fox News headline. I'm not joking. If they find one thing that's been recalled ever. So yes, it shut down any public gatherings, basically.
Absolutely. And this is why there's such monitoring. This is why there's such, isn't it amazing They know everything you and I type. They know everything we speak about, obviously, on the radio. They know all this stuff, yet they can't find ahead of time some guy who's texting in the opening and giving his, Arabic statements. I mean, or let's look at something even more real. It is fascinating to me that if any state is hated by the current administration, it's Texas. You remember the story? You remember seeing the images when Perry was governor of Obama meeting with him, putting his feet up on the desk. Well, showing someone the bottom here is a cultural flipping off of the person in total contempt. That's their religion.
In the Middle East, yeah, Obama has those characteristics.
And the situation that is fascinating is that, the Army just, in the last, 24, 48 hours, basically said anybody defending you should be treated as terrorists, and yet they denied their recruiters the ability to even arm themselves with sidearms and said, pull down the block.
Well, we confirmed it from callers, and we went out and talked to the recruiters. It's come down, and then later it was in the news confirming our report. The higher-ups of the Marines, the Army, you name it, called it, and they said, you don't even give them a chance. You call the cops and say you want them arrested for trespassing. You don't even tell them to go. We want to get these patriots in jail because this is the enemy. This is the type of American that would stand up to defend people. This is the scum. This is who we have to go after because the top brass are men and women that work for the globalist and who want to arm ISIS.
Absolutely. Now people have got to understand, when we were reporting years ago, and you started with the Mayak report and on the other documents, identifying veterans as enemies of the state.
Number one enemy. Number one, and said that veterans would attack every police department. I mean, what an insane statement.
Yep. And so the interesting thing is that in the years that I was on talk radio, I said it 20 years ago. Now, it's important to put this into perspective because that's how long it's been building. I said the goal of the overthrow of the United States, you'll know you're in the last stages when the police have turned against the people and the people are turning against the police. And all of this has been race baiting, and it's not the white guys. And I'm not blaming blacks, but it's the Department of Justice. It's the media that foments the revolution.
You said on my show 20 years ago, in 1995, I've been interviewing you from the beginning, you said they're going to demonize the military. They're going to have a night of the long knives. When they try to turn the public against the police and vice versa for destabilization, you know it's coming. And then once they have the first layer take over, then they're going to round up the veterans and they're going to round up the patriots in the military. And they've got a red and blue list. And now that's all admitted 2 years ago. The Army admits internment camps, and they even use the word re-education camp. Why would they use the famous Soviet term of a torture camp, a re-education? Why do they even use the same names? I mean, it's so naked.
It is naked, and the obvious point in all this is that somebody beyond the Russians and someone beyond the U.S. government is controlling the strings. The real puppet masters of the world aren't the guys, even the dynastic families of, the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and all the typical culprits. There are even people, or as I suggest, entities that have orchestrated this. When you look at the completeness of the plan for the destruction of the United States, Michael Savage said border, language, culture. Well, he has to add the people, too, now to that. Great Wall penetrating the weather underground. Alex, again, given the amount of people that were available and alive, just the population of the United States, now they're up to about 100 million on their different lists. And these camps aren't built just to take up space. Walmarts aren't closed just to basically frustrate shoppers. There is an integrated plan underway, and this is what people have got to say. It's the bigger picture. It's bigger than martial law. It's the complete overthrow. Look at what they've done to the Confederate flag, okay? You know what flag is next? The U.S. flag. You mark my words. The U.S. flag will be considered the absolute, I would say, the symbol of racism, symbol of everything that the United States has done wrong.
We joked about it 2 weeks ago. It's now being proposed by mainstream groups to replace it with a rainbow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we are at the point where obviously obviously, everything that is being done is, how do I say this? We are in a position now where everyone who used to love this country, look at all of the NFL, even National Football League. Everybody's down on guns, and the whole situation. Your and my disfavorite person goes on Piers Morgan and starts blaming Bobby Jindal for,
Stay there. Let's come back and get into that. The end game is clearly here, the beginning of the end game. We're fighting to hold it back. Can we do it? Stay with us. Well, he's produced a new documentary film and is producing a TV series. It actually starts next week. First installment's going to be on DVD, stevequayle.com. True Legends, Technologies of the Fallen Ones. Pretty powerful stuff from what I've seen so far. I've got to roll some of that trailer in the background, see the trailer, read about it, and the accompanying book of a similar title at stevequayle.com. I'll get him at the end of the interview to give us more details on that subject. Steve Quayle is our guest. We know this. Bohemian Grove is going on right now. Its final day is this Sunday, and they are doing occultic rituals, having orgies, having homosexual sex. And the issue is it's the Republican leadership doing it. Not everybody that goes there is bad. Not everybody, there is a Satanist. But it's a way to induct ruling class people as the doorway into the deeper cult. But even John Ronson, who snuck in with me but made me promise, the guy that wrote the book, Ministeric Goats, that got made into a movie, he wrote them. He made me promise not to say he was there because of liability. He could have gotten sued. He, I, and Mike Hansen stuck in. I had to not put a lot of the footage in to my film because it was John Ronson there with us. But I put Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove out, and he was there. He saw it with me. He saw the big photo on a tree of Henry Kissinger. There was Secret Service nearby, so I couldn't get the camera hidden and get footage of it. Dressed in drag, doing something sexual. And the point is, this is not some moral judgment of this, not because I don't make moral judgments, but because get past that and just look at it for what it is. Blackmail. Even Spy Magazine, even People Magazine admits huge problems with HIV at the Bohemian Grove back to the 70s, back to the early 80s. Just huge, bizarre behavior with former presidents, prime ministers, British royalty, Dutch royalty, female prostitutes down the road at the hotels, 2,700 acres with just men having sex with each other. This is to compromise people. And it's going on right now. Same thing at Skull and Bones. Homoerotic. Worshiping the devil. And every culture that goes downhill ends up worshiping a dark entity. So whether you believe it's real or not, the elites do believe in the devil. I've been there, inside for 5 hours. And I thought it was like a stupid devil worship play. Except the men were raptured. They were dead serious, more focused than I've seen people in any holy roller church that I've attended. And I've been in Baptist, Southern Baptist, Pentecostal, growing up the whole 9 yards. I mean, these people were hardcore serious, and their eyes were on fire during the mock human sacrifice of a child. And we say mock because it appeared to be mock. People say you're covering up. Look, they found dead kids in the area. There's been a lot of weird stuff. You talk to the locals, it's like one of those vampire movies from the 60s with Peter Cushing. And, he's trying to talk to locals. They won't talk to him. I mean, it's like that. It's very Transylvanian looking, too. And I don't mean to digress. It's just that Steve Quayle gets off into what they're into as well in his books, in his films at stevequayle.com. Just amazing information there, economic information, you name it. Just a great one-stop shop for everything out of this world that's connected to reality. You can get my film, Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove, and then it has the addendum film, The Order of Death, a 2-DVD set for $19.95 to have it as part of your library. But it's also free online. It has a 5-star rating through major third-party services where people have rated it. Hundreds of people have rated it 5 stars, both films. So if you want to support us, get the film. at InfoWarsStore.com. Free shipping throughout the month of July. That ends in just 6 days. It is your purchase of the products that allows us to send reporters to Bilderberg in Austria, that's going to allow me to go to investigate how bad Europe and the collapse really is. This is important. I need to go put eyes on this because they say Rome is, quote, collapsing. London Telegraph. They say areas of Spain, 50% unemployment, collapsing. The city of London's running the whole operation. We're going to be documenting that. The Greece situation. So I'm not going to say exactly where I'll be and when, but look for that in the next 2 weeks, starting middle of next week. Steve, I want to get into the news with you, and then I want to talk about your updated book and your new film coming out before you leave us, and you'll be back next week to get more into the mindset of the Illuminist and why they're building this, why they're doing this, why they're trying to block off alternative histories that we continue to discover actually do have roots in reality. But Steve Quayle, giving you the floor now because I've been ranting some here. You wanted to get into this latest shooting and how they're hyping it, Bobby Jindal, where you see the election going. Obama says he's going to go after the guns. He told BBC yesterday in the next 18 months, they're going after Social Security recipients' guns, saying if you take a wire transfer or automatic transfer of your check, that means that you are incompetent. I mean, that's in the FBI memo. This is really bold. Are they trying to start a civil war, Steve Quayle?
Absolutely. Now, why is it critical that people understand this? The idea of the war in the primary Jade Helm states, okay, and we know it's bigger than that, Alex. I can talk about Montana and what's going on up here, but more importantly than that, they have to divide the nation. Jesus said a house divided against itself cannot stand. And so we've got, how do I say this, the 23rd mass shooting since Obama became president. And isn't it interesting, it had to be in Bobby Jindal's state, Louisiana. And it's fascinating to me that the governors that care for the men in both the military or the National Guard in their states are now being vindicated. Just wait, there will be more attacks on the states, and people are getting, how do I say this? We are at a hair trigger, in my opinion. Now, let's get back to something, because you asked me a question that's really critical. The United Nations, obviously Russia and China, are the leading, ranking members by power, at least, of the Security Council. The secret agreements that exist that most people don't know, but you have been told, I have been told, we have been told, pretty much are, and this is what you've got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, they do not want you as United States citizens. They want you as citizens of the world. In order to do that, they have to take the guns. Jon Stewart was on TV with Obama, saying, you got to take the guns away. And then, being accused of white privilege. Well, here's the deal. In order for the communists, in order for the globalists, and by the way, communism is just one of the things that the globalists use, they want the complete. Now, Alex, here's the reality avoidance thing that I can't seem to break through. God help you to break through it. God help me and anybody else, is that this really is the plan. We can quote the globalists. We can quote the Illuminati until we're blue in the face about they want this many people dead. How is it that the disconnect does not transfer through to people? Well, that's because, again, of the subcarrier signals, infrasonics, blah, blah, blah. But the point that's really critical is that I would think most people who, at least 1 in 3, if they have their way, it's 9 out of 10, who are in the sites would see the bigger picture. I've been told that, I don't know if you know for a fact that you're banned on military bases, but, I've been told that I am banned just about on anything to do with the military, okay?
InfoWars is banned on almost all military bases. Getting to InfoWars and Prison Planet for about a decade, yes.
Yes, and I mean, we've known that for some time, but now people are saying, hey, wait a minute. If this stuff is coming to pass that Steve and Alex and Steve are talking about, then why are they banning them? Well, I'll tell you why, and this has got to sink in, because first, the very first statement that the president made was he wanted a private security, basically army, and why is it that those guys, DHS, are getting funded, and while the military basically has to beg? Now, it's obvious with all of the firings of our generals, admirals, senior military officials, that there's a different Pentagon now. And the Pentagon, unfortunately, I believe, is under the spell of the pentagram. And so when we talk about the war on the vets, it's not prophecy to say, here's where it's going to head to next. You just said, and this is a plan, and anybody on Social Security that takes their check, they're going to consider anybody incapacitated. They're going to have, you mark my words, they're going to declare senility, or they're going to come up with something and say every veteran suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. They're going to...
That's right. Just like the Jews and others got persecuted in Germany, they're now going to get ready openly to say veterans, conservatives, libertarians, white people are inherently evil and now need to be dealt with unless you're a leftist. You can see the takeover. Everything the weathermen openly talked about in front of the FBI that came out in court, this was their plan. And since you raise it, think about Obama saying, I will go after the guns. I will get the guns in the next 18 months. We played that last hour. Jon Stewart says, act quickly. Take those guns, Mr. President. I mean, this is an outrageous move with them cheerleading to start the Civil War when Jon Stewart openly has armed bodyguards. I mean, these people will be held accountable when all this kicks off for their sedition against our country. So since you mention it, here's the Jon Stewart clip, and then I have huge breaking news. Here it is.
You don't have that much time to take away Americans' guns, declare martial law, and put hardworking Americans in FEMA camps. If you're going to do that, you better get started. You better get started.
See, they make a big joke out of it. We just had him on the BBC saying he's got 18 months and he will act. And now they're coming after the vets. They're putting them on don't treat list. That's a death sentence right there. They've built, in fact, pull up Watson's article. Just type in, yes, internment camps are real, proof, or Army manual, talks about re-education camps, Infowars.com. They're like 3 years old. It has the Army field manual, how to process our Social Security numbers, how to break our families up. It's in the Army Times. It's in, there it is. Leaked U.S. Army document outlines plan for re-education camps in America. They call them that. It's at army.mil. Okay? So it's just like they first said the Planned Parenthood videos about killing kids aren't real and selling their body parts. Now they admit it. But then they had Salon come out yesterday and say it's not real, and that I'm a racist, and that Margaret Sanger isn't. That's inverted reality, folks. I was brought up to hate racists. My sister's Korean adopted. But I don't have to sit here and tell you I'm not racist. The proof is I stand up for life. And I'm ranting. I apologize. Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com is with us. I've got to read this. This just came in. It just broke. They were confirming it. This is exclusive to Infowars.com. Tampa recruiting offices have been evacuated due to threat. The video is on Infowars.com. Unspecified shooting threat comes 1 week after Chattanooga's shooting. All recruitment centers in Tampa have been ordered to evacuate due to threats that there will be shootings in the area. Info from recruiter, Georgia resident Jeff Hansen stated in a tweet, and we did that. We had him tweet just so we could show it was on record. FYI, we have to buy bullets. Somebody call our battalion. The threat to shoot the recruiting offices in Tampa. We are ordered to leave the office. So this happened at 11:56 our time. We've just been vetting it for the last hour. And, of course, we told you that there was an order to arrest. I'm going to skip the network break. This is so important. We told everybody that this was going on a day before it came out that there were threats in Florida, in Tampa, and that there was an order to call the police and arrest people with guns trying to protect it. That was then mainstream news yesterday. So we have all the names, all the facts documented, exclusive to Infowars.com, red linked up at the top of the site. We're going to get it red linked. Report Tampa recruiting offices evacuated due to shooting threat. Let's add the word shooting to that so people understand how serious this is. We've confirmed Austin's getting threats, or a suburb of Austin. We've confirmed that Las Vegas is getting threats. This goes right into what you were talking about, the attack on the military. Steve Quayle, sorry.
Well, no, that's critical that people understand that. And I'm gonna tell people what's going to happen. You're going to see a mass exodus from the military, and you're going to see a lot of people going AWOL. Now, I'm not trying to foment anything. I'm just telling you, and even the guys in the Pentagon, the people that monitor every word you say and I say, they'd better understand something, that some of these people are tired of their best friends, their fathers, their brothers, their mothers in some cases being murdered. I want to make this clear. The Veterans Administration is absolutely under orders to deny veterans life-saving help, unless, like you said.
And let's just say it. We know there's covert programs going on to kill veterans that were in sensitive positions by poisoning them. We know that's going on, too.
One of the saddest things, Alex, is I got a letter from an email from a wife of a veteran who absolutely has to have pain medicine. You know, he's so messed up, and please, when I say messed up, so much pain, he's begging his wife to take his life. That makes me so crazy that the gutless senators, the traitorous children from hell are smirkingly keeping their silence while the greatest attack in history, we will go down, okay? It's one thing to have a Trojan horse. It's another thing to have a Trojan government. And the thing that's amazing to everybody is the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, our hate crimes. You put the video up years ago of the military, training the citizens.
The federal government is a globalist Trojan horse. It is the takeover.
Absolutely.
They're waging war on the vets. They're waging war on us. It's already here. Are we undoubtedly, with the Pope announcing world government, global carbon taxes, global communism? I mean, what is the system going to do, Steve? Is everything you've talked about, everything George has talked about, George Norrie, everything I've talked about with the New World Order is coming true? Drudge is reporting on it. All these other WorldNet Daily.
Yeah.
What is the system going to do as our credibility rises and rises?
Well, obviously, they've got to stop our access to the internet. They've got to shut us up. They'll Breitbart whoever. And that's why I tell your listeners and my listeners, pray for Alex, pray for me, pray for Doug Hagman, pray for these men that are out there and women that are really telling the truth. And what I'm seeing, too, Alex, is there's some, writers that used to be considered conservatives that are, let's just say this, they make Judas Iscariot look like a little leaguer because they are so duplicitous and so treasonous. Now, here is the deal. People have got to understand that they have to go into a full reality check. They can no longer...
That's right. We were put into this incrementally. I think about this all the time. I know what you're going to say because it's in the spirit. We have been put into it incrementally. You've got to break out of it. You don't come out of it incrementally. You've got to break out of the trance. Even if you're already awake and aware, if you're not scrambling like someone being drowned to get out of this and warning people desperately, we need hysteria. We need stuff to... That's what it's for. We need the floods coming. The dam broke. Get to high ground. We need to get that kick in the ass going. Is that what you were about to say?
Absolutely. And if anybody calls, and let me tell you, neurolinguistic programming, if anybody calls you, me, or anybody telling the truth, and I would say empiric truth, the documents that back us up, if they call us fearmongers, doom porn, those words are indicative of basically trying to reinvent language to get people to dismiss the truth. Look, the whole world lies in the evil one. That's what Jesus said, okay? And that means that the truth is now the most avoided, vilified, nullified concept, I believe, in the United States and the world. Let me finish this about the United Nations. The United Nations is going to use the Russian troops, the Chinese troops, both borders. We talked about all the weapons.
Explain how it's going to work. As they dissolve the U.S. government, they have to have one program that looks legitimate for the troops and the Congress. But as you said, they're building a parallel UN, FEMA, 7277 takeover that's actually in U.S. code and already law to then use Russians and Chinese here. Then our troops are sent over there to keep control of them. That's the UN Agenda 21 literal Hunger Games model. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And that's why people are seeing intermingled with all the pictures of trains, with all the highways, are seeing UN vehicles. Now, this is something that most people don't understand. Those dumbs, and I'm not talking about the Senate right now, but the deep underground military bunkers or bases have so much more to bring out. Some of these bases are huge, Alex. And so what's going to happen is it's going to, as things escalate, and here's what I'm trying to, my goal is to diffuse civil war, okay? I want people to understand that.
That's right.
I want the gangs to understand that you're being set up. I want the blacks to understand, and I'm talking Black Panthers, to understand they're being set up. The racism, listen, when someone says Margaret Sanger was not a racist, that is the dumbest ass statement I have ever heard in the world. You know, look, don't listen to anybody. When you hear something that says, you know, that doesn't sound right. Alex said she was, Steve says she was, and go read what she is, and she was. And for the record, she wanted the annihilation of the black people. More black
She said, I want every black person exterminated.
Absolutely. So, Alex.
And imagine fake liberal sites say in the same article, I'm racist, the Planned Parenthood video is a hoax, and Margaret Sanger was not racist. I mean, these people are pure servants of fraud.
And of hell. Let me say this. We're in the same time period. People want to go read Jeremiah 50:51. Jeremiah was the Old Testament prophet that said, woe unto them who call evil good and good evil. How about the doctor that was, you know, trying to barter with baby parts in order to get her Lamborghini? Well, I'll tell you one thing. I hope she gets her Lamborghini because she's already on a fast track to hell. People, this should absolutely be astonishing. Veterans who have defended your freedom because you sat back and did nothing, because you sat back and said nothing. This is the enemy. And those people that have said nothing, how do I say this, done nothing, even begun to spine up, stand up, and do something, Alex, they're complicit in their own destruction. That's the other thing I can't seemingly get across.
SteveQuail.com is the website. Steve Quail is our guest. I'm Alex Jones, and this is the Info War. I wish it wasn't true, but it turns out we were right about basically everything, except it's worse than we thought. And it looks like we could be 2 minutes to midnight. The enemy is moving. The enemy is moving. Alert worldwide. The enemy is moving fast. We don't know exactly what they're going to pull, but we know what they've got in their hand, and it's bad. I wanted to bring Weldon Henson in here briefly because we have a great sponsor. Boy, I've sure been enjoying the firearms that I've gotten from them. hdfirearms.com. That's Head Down Firearms. They have super high quality 223s, 308, you name it. It's called 5.56 technically in the 223 that are guns that would be $3,000 or $1,500. Guns that would be $1,500 or $900. They've got a bunch of super high quality customization services, holsters, accessories. Weldon Henson, tell us about some of the great accessories available at hdfirearms.com.
Well, the important thing to remember is that if you're not in the market to buy a brand new rifle, you have an AR-15, you have an AR-10 platform, 308 rifle. They've got everything you need to upgrade it. Buy a new part, buy a new trigger, buy a new muzzle brake, buy a new handrail. It's all an upgrade for your rifle because these are all superior top-of-the-line quality products made in America.
Tell folks about their low-profile series.
Well, this is an important thing to have. You know, this is untraceable. Anybody can get this kit right here. You don't have to go through a federal firearms license place. You can have it shipped right to your house.
This is what the traders have been trying to shut down.
Absolutely. So you basically have everything you need besides a lower receiver because that's what's traceable, that's what's serialized, and that's what the federal government's after. But you can get this right here. Get your own lower receiver any way you want. There's different programs. All you got to do is your own research, and you can find out how to get a lower receiver so that you can put it on this. Maybe you already have a lower receiver from an AR from way back that you just don't quite use anymore. It's old, something like that. You can throw it on this. You basically have a brand new rifle, and you saved money by putting it together yourself and buying this kit right here, which is cheaper than the actual rifle.
And they've got the highest quality barrels, the highest quality triggers. We're not just saying that. Go look at the third-party reviews. Tell them about the new rifle they're producing that's getting amazing reviews. And then I just got one, this 308.
Yes, that is very...
Arcadius.
That's very exciting. They just came out with their own line of AR-10 platforms, which is basically an AR-15, but instead of it being a 5.56, it shoots a 308 round, which I know you personally like shooting a 308.
I like them both. I mean, just to be clear, they've always, for years, been making this for the big manufacturers, the high end. They're just now not private labeling. They're putting out their own guns.
Yes. Well, the one they sent you, I'm actually jealous of. It's a beautiful gun. It's set up and configured for long-range shooting, marksmanship type things.
Just the scope alone is something to snuggle with.
Yeah, it's a Vortex 4x16 scope, which you can get at Head Down as well, their distributor. And a things for people to remember is that if you want a 308, you don't have to get the 18-inch barrel. You don't have to get the 22-inch barrel. You don't have to get it set up for marksmanship. You can get one with a 16-inch barrel that's set up for more of an assault weapon type, configuration. So anything you want, people just call Head Down. You can get anything you want made there, and any configuration you might want on your rifle. They're able to do that, and they have 100% perfect customer service ratings there.
Bottom line, it's not just firearms, a ton of accessories, very affordable, and it supports the info war. If you're not shopping at hdfirearms.com, you're not helping the info war. I mean, this is a win-win. Thank you all for your support. Check them out today. Thank you, Weldon.